Welcome to Chartloop's Growth Series. We have with us today Daniel Wardle, account executive at Multiverse. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, Sean. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Multiverse.
Yeah, great. So a little bit about me. I've been in sales now for about 3 or 4 years. Before that, started off, my background was in teaching. So I used to teach at a school in inner city Birmingham in England for kids who kind of been kicked out of school. I did that for a few years, then traveled a bit and went to work for some charities, kind of doing educational work there. Kind of pivoted around 5 or 6 years ago and thought, no, startups are really where I want to go, and how do I start there? Joined quite a small startup with just 5 staff. Eventually finding my way into the sales position more by kind of luck than design. Found out I really enjoyed it, and then when I moved to Multiverse, or White Hat as we used to be called, we've recently changed our name. I just kind of grew and fell in love with sales, and now I've kind of grown with Multiverse as we've scaled over the last couple of years, which is really exciting. In terms of Multiverse, our aim is to be the first mission-driven unicorn. And that mission is to build an outstanding alternative to university and to corporate training. We do that through kind of talking to 2 main things that kind of the C-suite and CEOs in particular really care about, which is improving diversity and providing the skills to enable digital transformation. Those are kind of 2 hot topics that are on every CEO's lips at the moment. So that's the kind of those are the problems that we solve for senior stakeholders.
That's phenomenal. So we'll get back to that. So the fun fact about how we met, I think you were one of the very first users Chartloop ever had. While this thing was an alpha or beta, we were just like spreading out the word on Reddit, and you were actually the first sales call I had with the user. And I think there's we probably have about 5 or 6 different features that have your name on it, like our deal boards and a whole bunch of other things which you kind of help us come up with. So Multiverse, other than your mission-driven offering and all of that, you guys are renowned for your phenomenal sales. I call this talent, and coming from big dynasties of sales training and enterprise sales. So tell us a little bit about that and how that kind of affects the way you guys do sales, because I think if it's just a typical startup with 2 or 3 guys in the room versus Multiverse, the way you guys operate with your enterprise sales is probably at a different league.
Yeah, and look, so as I mentioned, and by the way, I didn't know that I was your first ever sales call. You did that from until this moment. That's good.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell you that.
Well, you couldn't tell, so well done there. So so we're a medic-driven organization, and that kind of with a real focus on enterprise level selling. And that wasn't always the case. When I joined 2 years ago, our average sales price was in the kind of high 5 figures, low 5 figures. We were just kind of grateful for anyone to really talk to us at that point, as you are when you're in a kind of pre-Series A startup. We just had our seed round, and really we were going out to market just to see if this thing would even stick, right? We had an idea, we had a hunch, we thought we were pretty good at what we did. Certainly our delivery side of the business is kind of sector leading and still is, but you never know until you go out there. And then about a year ago now, we were joined, really fortunate. We had Jeremy Duggan and Steve McCluskey join as Jeremy as president now and kind of sits on our board, and Steve as the VP of go-to-market. And Steve is just one of the most in-demand CROs in the world. And Jeremy's track record at the likes of PTC and that dynamics speaks for itself, really. I think we're kind of his 5th startup now that he's aiming to take to multi-billion-dollar valuation in a row. So this guy knows sales, he knows what he's talking about. And really, we've been set up as a sales school now. So, me with my kind of 1-2 years worth of experience when they joined, I've learned so much in the last kind of 12 to 18 months. There was a session that Jeremy did where he kind of sat down and before he'd even joined us, he was just joining as a favor, really, because we shared some investors with kind of who he knew. And that day, I always refer to that day as the day that changed my life. I actually, on that day, I lost 2 kind of, mid 6-figure deals. That day, I got the call in the training that we missed out on these deals. And I just felt like the lowest of the low, felt awful. And that was the day that I learned, okay, well, there's this process, there's this, medic-based process, the 3 whys, running the org charts, this systematic approach. And I thought, I'm just going to go all in on this, because what I'm doing right now clearly isn't working in the way that, some months, some quarters I'd hit my target, some quarters I'd barely touch it. So I was kind of up or down, and it was reliant on a load of different variables. And I wasn't, as we say now, in control of my own destiny. So Jeremy, no doubt, has changed my life. And then Steve is the guy who comes in and says, okay, here's how we're going to do it. And it's kind of drip fed, he builds you up, both individually and as a team. So that now our average sales price is kind of, I think it's 5x, maybe even 10x now what it was. We're solely focused in the AE team at that enterprise level. And it is really kind of, like I said, a sales school. We're taking in now at the AE level, high performing, high quality salespeople who know their stuff. But we've also got a kind of commercial account exec level, where it's guys and girls like I was, 2 years ago, with a bit of sales experience, some with no sales experience at all, but they're high potential young people that we're bringing in and kind of training them up. And they don't really promote people. They don't really hire in sales managers. They only promote as well. So the incentive is really there to be great, right? And to deliver, and the rewards, you can take those rewards and they'll come to you if you deserve them.
Right. No, that's phenomenal. I mean, this is similar, to your guys' offerings in terms of like, taking talent and upskilling them, within an organization, or adding to them, and also doing this with your own, sales talent, sales school. That's and really with kind of the world's best sales leadership. So that's really phenomenal. So we'll get a little bit into your methodology in a second, but tell me, so you mentioned like you guys are going after, C-suites of some of these, very large enterprises. It sounds like you have multiple personas that you're going after. Does that make it any harder in terms of like focus and getting into an account?
We're pretty, so just to describe what we do, I guess, just kind of those watching. So essentially what we offer is apprenticeship training programs, both for new hires, and we support with recruitment, getting young, diverse people in as an alternative route to university. So rather than getting graduates in, where the value proposition for university, both for those people going to university or college in the States, and for employers, is kind of gone through the floor, especially during COVID, right? So, if you're a young person now and you're looking at the options, you're saying, well, can I afford university? And also, is university going to give me the skills that are actually going to be useful in my job, right? I did a degree in politics and philosophy. I mean, maybe I use it quite a bit in terms of the way I think, maybe at a push, but it certainly doesn't give me applicable skills to any role that I've done on, regularly. And then for businesses, you're, in a really competing for a really small, non-diverse pool of candidates on a yearly basis. And the competition, especially for technical talent, is so fierce. The salaries that you're paying are going up, and those graduates who are hiring haven't necessarily done a degree in the thing that you want them to do. So you're paying for training anyway, and they're not that diverse. So actually, why don't we create an alternative where we go to young people and say, okay, great, we're going to get you into our business and give you training, and we're going to hire for potential, not based on academics. We're not going to hire you based on your work experience. If you've seen the CV of an 18-year-old, they all look the same, right? So we're going to hire based on potential. And then the parallel offering to that, which is very successful here in the UK, is you've got this digital transformation going on, again, exacerbated by COVID. You've bought a load of products, a load of tech products. I'm sure a lot of people watching this, they're in SaaS, they're selling these products really, really well. But when you talk about digital transformation, you talk about people, process, and technology. So we're the people side of that. Actually, you need the people to deliver these digital transformation projects. I think that's useful, a little bit of background. So you would think naturally when we're speaking to the C-suite that it would be HR that we would want to speak to. And HR are really, valuable kind of allies during this process. But because Steve and Jeremy's focus is so much on that medic kind of formula for de-risking deals, that really when we're meeting a client, we want to find a champion and we want to find pain. So we want to find a challenge that we can solve and that is applicable to what we do. And we want to find a champion who feels that pain. And HR are great allies and they can maybe point you towards the right people, but they don't feel that pain in their day-to-day. With our data programs or project management programs that we run, our software engineering programs that we run, it's going to be, the CIO, the CDO that feel those problems. So we need to speak to them first. And often that's what, really drives a deal. We talk about having both product champions as well as deal champions. Product champions are people who, they like Multiverse. Maybe they like me as well. Fingers crossed. Sometimes that happens when I'm lucky.
Sure.
But they're not a champion of a deal, right? They don't want to get something done. They just like who we are. And sometimes, it's diversity. People think, oh, that's nice. Yeah, we'll keep these guys around, but it's not going to pay the bills, right? The guys who are going to pay the bills and the kind of leaders who are going to pay the bills are the people who really feel those challenges. So we need to be speaking to them. So when we approach a company for the first time, and we'll talk about how we go about that in a bit, I guess,
sure.
But the people that we want to go for are those business side, non-HR C-suite leaders.
Right. No, I love it how you guys really kind of are able to reach the highest level with your pain point and message, and I'm sure that drives also the deal size and just getting things done. So tell us about your magic. I mean, what does your sales process and methodology look like?
Yeah. So should we take it? Well, we'll take it from the start, right? So, if you're a new rep joining Multiverse, your role is PG, pipeline generation. That's it. We take it one. I always say, like, how do you eat an elephant? Whenever I speak to a new rep, I say, how do you eat an elephant? And I let that question kind of dangle there for a little bit. And usually, to be honest, I think every single new rep has got it. And maybe that speaks, really highly of our hiring culture. But, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. PG is the fundamental, pipeline generation is the fundamental basis that you're going to build your territory on. You're not going to do any sales unless you're going out and speaking to people. So what you need to do is go and make a load of mistakes. I'm really trying hard not to swear here. I apologize.
Go for it. We're a liberal shop here.
You have to make a shit ton of mistakes, right? You're going to have to go out there and do that. You're going to have to learn the value proposition on the fly, but really you're going to have to get out there, start shooting for the stars and start speaking to people. You're going to have to start emailing, LinkedIn, phone calls. We'll give you all the tools to kind of set you up to do that, but that's it. And it's hard. It is not easy. Anyone who can do that regularly and commit their time to it day after day after day is going to win eventually, right? So we give you your territory, you go and do that. That's the start. After that, we've got a whole range of tools. By the way, I'm missing loads out that they need to, account planning, territory mapping, all that stuff.
Sure.
Then when you land, you're like, okay, I've got my first meeting. We've got a new business meeting, NBM as we call it, a new business meeting kind of a process that we go through kind of step by step, and there's the right way to do it. And we're tracked on, is there a leader in the room? Is there a line manager on our side, a regional director? How many people are in the room on that side? It should be more than one. They should both be C-suite, and they should be, from different areas of the business, ideally. Maybe someone from HR and maybe a business side leader. That's a good sign for us. Have you done something called a value pyramid, which indicates our first bit of research? So we don't want to be going and showing up and throwing up, with, turning up into a meeting and saying, hey, here's all the stuff that we do. How do you want some? Like that's not going to sell, multi-million pound deals in enterprise companies. What we need to be doing is going in and speaking to pain as we understand it. So we're looking at strategy reports, we're looking at earnings reports, we're looking at, we're watching videos from the CEO or the person that we're meeting when they were doing interviews like this one, right? To find out about that business. So we can go to them and say, hey, this is what we understand. Like, and at the very worst, they go, well, you've got it completely wrong. Okay, it's happened to me once where they've gone, you've got this completely wrong. That's nothing to do with our business, and I really dropped the ball here. But at least in that scenario, you can say, well, okay, great. Well, what's wrong? Like, tell me what's right.
Yeah.
But at least you've proven. And 9 times out of 10, it goes much better than that. And they go, wow, sometimes they say things like, I've been in, not with me, unfortunately, but with some of my colleagues, wow, you've put that better than we've put that ourselves. Can we steal this for our strategy? Nice. That's when you really nailed the pain that this company is feeling, just based on your knowledge of the sector, your knowledge of what your clients tend to be struggling with. And then after that, we discuss the pain. Then we tell them a bit about who we are. But always, then we've got reference points, right? The other thing we track at that point is, have you had a prep call? So before you have that first meeting, have you had a call with someone for 10 minutes, 15 minutes to find out a little bit more, to build up that value pyramid? Again, these are marginal things, and you can't get it done for every new business meeting. But if you can, if I'm speaking to someone, senior or not, and I say, hey, are you bringing your other senior colleague along? And they say, yeah, well, it's an hour, I'll bring them along. Okay, great. Could we have just 10-15 minutes to make the most of your time, just so I can really understand your business? So we're not starting from a standing start on that hour, and I make the most of your time and obviously your colleagues' time as well. Again, 9 times out of 10, they see that as a good use of time, because they're not having to explain things to me beforehand, in the room. And then when I get there, I can turn up even more prepared, and it makes them look good in front of their colleagues. So who wouldn't want that?
Sure. Post
MBM, there's a whole nother process. We run 3 whys. We run the org chart, which is obviously how I kind of got into Chartloop, is a major part of the process. Do you want me to talk about that now? Or
yeah, I'd love to. So you mentioned
time there. So
no, that's right. So you mentioned you actually show up at this new business meeting, and what do you present them? Is this 3 whys thing, or is this something else?
Yeah, so the value pyramid is essentially the genesis of the 3. It's the first version of the 3 whys. The 3 whys is I'll tell you what the why for the 3 whys. It should be a document that if the world was spinning and we were back in offices again, and the CEO of that business walked past your desk and saw the 3 whys there, they would be able to pick up that document and say, I recognize those challenges. I recognize these voices and these people. It's in my branding and it's in the language that we use here. Flip it over. Okay, and I understand how Multiverse solves those problems, and I understand why it's urgent, because those 3 whys are: why do anything? So the why anything, because often your enemy is not a competitor, especially when you're in a startup space. Your competitor is doing nothing, right? So, why do anything? Okay, so usually as it relates to Medic, that's the pain, right? What's the big challenge that we're trying to solve here? And if we're speaking to the C-suite, it's going to be one of the biggest challenges that business faces. The next is the why Multiverse. So then we're tying those pains to our business or our solution. So we're saying, okay, well, one of the major challenges you're finding is that your diversity stats are X and you want them to be Y, and your current recruitment strategy isn't working. Okay, and we've got 3 or 4 people, because we've met a load of people across the business who tell us that. And here's a quote from your CHRO who says, exactly that. Wow, the CEO picks that up. They say, yeah, that's a problem. And wow, look at all these people. Flip it over, and it says, okay, well, Multiverse's diversity stats for our recruitment support, or it's the length of average length of tenure for an apprentice is twice as long as that as a grad. So we've got kind of use case studies. So we've got the why anything, and then we've got the why Multiverse, and then finally you've got the why now. And the why now is really important, right? Yeah, because that's what drives urgency. And why now is done in a number of different ways. It's kind of weaved through the document in the form of metrics, statistics. So actually you're looking at, that diversity stat, but it could be in our recruitment, it takes us 3 months, 6 months to hire a data analyst. With Multiverse, we can hire you a data analyst and train them. The training program is 18 months long, but we could find you one in a month. And they're going to be really super diverse as well. So actually, how long does it take you to hire a data analyst? how much does that cost your business in lost revenue? How much do you pay that person and how much do you pay your recruitment agency versus using Multiverse? Okay, great. Now we've got a figure. And if you're losing that amount of money with those empty seats on a monthly basis, that drives urgency, because I can say to you, you know, what if they, because sometimes clients do, you know, they say, we don't want to, you know, we're going to push this till, you know, the H2 in 2021.
Yeah.
And you're going, okay, well, and that's when you've got an argument to come back and say, well, you know, is this, we talked through this, you know, we've spoken to your CHRO, we've spoken to your talent acquisition team, we've spoken to your leaders, and they tell us that you're losing $300,000 a month on empty seats and lost productivity costs. So, you know, if we start next month, you lose $300,000. But if we start in 6 months' time, we lose 6 times that amount. I'm not very good at maths, so I don't know what that is in my head, but I'm sure.
You're not the first. No, nor am I. You're not the first sales rep. It's not that good with them.
So yeah, that's the kind of that's what the 3 whys is, and that links to the org chart, which is where Chartloop comes in, obviously.
So just a question there on the 3 whys. I think this was actually initially championed by John McConan at PTC like 30 years ago, and definitely part of the Medic sales methodology. How do you develop this? This is like something, you know, this is your desk research, and then you show up at whatever. If you're selling to Google or Facebook, and like, okay, here's what I think, or is there a back and forth? And how do you, when you say like, oh, I think you're, you know, losing, if you push this off 2 quarters, you're losing $2 million. Like, do they get very angry when you say such a thing, or how does that come across?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing we always look for, so we do that initial research, right? That I talked about. Here's what, you know, our clients in the same sector. Luckily now, again, 2 years down the line, we've got clients in almost every sector. So we can reference sell and we can social sell. Back when I started, we didn't have that, so it was just a guess. But you know, you can talk about, you know, here's what we think from your strategy. Here's what you've said publicly. You know, even the likes of kind of Google, Facebook, who are our clients, they, you know, they do put stuff out regularly. You know, their senior leaders are being interviewed all the time. There's lots of information out there. They've got diversity strategies. They've got earnings calls. They've got all these things where they do talk about their challenges. So we can reference those. So they can't argue with that. And if they do argue with that, then they're not a champion, right? As we would say. If they argue with something that's publicly available data and say that that's wrong, then, you know, they're clearly not the type of person who's going to drive forward change.
Sure.
When you're talking about later on around that medic purpose, and I do not absolutely purport to be an expert here, because, you know, still learning, heavily caveated.
Oh, I think you're quite a great practitioner.
You know, all we're looking for at the start, that new business meeting, we're looking for 3 things. Was one of those people in the room a potential champion? I.e., do they have the will and the power and the personality to drive change? Right? Are they, you know, a year from retirement and they're coasting? Then they're not going to be, no matter how amazing their track record, right? They're not, because they're not going to stick around.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10. The second thing we're looking for is there identified pain that we can develop and we can solve? And when I mean develop, we can dig into it. We can start having other meetings to kind of really understand the metrics behind that, get that why now that I talked about. Then we're looking at what are the next steps. So we're looking for champion with a pain and identified next steps. If we've got those 3 things, that's all we care about in that first meeting. Then based on how that first meeting has gone, we're then looking to look at, okay, well, usually it's going to be, let's develop that pain. Let's build that champion, especially when it's enterprise selling, right? You're going to be on a campaign here for maybe 6 months, maybe even a year. If you want to make, you know, a serious deal size. So it's worth investing. And this is absolutely somewhere where I need to get better, is I'm very process driven, but I'm not people first, right? I need to get better at putting people first, putting their kind of feelings and their emotions ahead of my desire to just run the process, right? So really it's about building that person as a champion. Do they really understand your value proposition? Do they really understand all the multiple ways? Because you can't cover that in a 1-hour meeting. All the multiple ways that we help them and we help clients like them. Have we mapped out using an org chart either one that I've brought to them based on something like, you know, using my Chartloop research and using LinkedIn to kind of fill in the gaps, or something that they give me. And, you know, look, Chartloop's great, but if it's not, it's never going to be as good as a client just giving you the chart, right?
Totally.
And, you know, sometimes that's what I'm going to ask for. But in these sometimes vast enterprise accounts, they don't have it. They have, you know, the C-suite, and that's on the website, but everything else, you know, who's the data lead in there, you know, in the office on the south coast of England, like, it's not on the org chart. We need to go and find that person out.
So is this,
yeah, go ahead.
Is this a question you would go to your champion and like, okay, there's you and Jenna on the deal. How do, you know, who else do we need at the table? Or like, do you like show them, okay, here's who I think we should be talking to? How does that look?
Yeah, and so first we've got to build them, right? So we've got to make sure that they're comfortable with us. You need to earn the right for those introductions. Sometimes, you know, being assumptive and asking is great, but you know, often you've got to show that you're a business person, not a salesperson a lot of the time, and that actually you're there to support them. And often there's a little bit of testing. You know, when I think of one of my best champions, I asked too early, and they said, look, no, they basically said no. And I said, look, okay, fine, I haven't earned the right. You know, what do we need to do? We had a few more meetings, and they said, right, great. I've been speaking to some colleagues and they're very interested. Let me take you to this room. And eventually they've kind of driven, you know, $1 million kind of deals eventually in that business. So every piece of data that you get from a champion, even if it's negative initially, it is a great piece of data to have, because with Medic, you've always got a question to ask. And as you're kind of going through collecting, you know, the different elements of Medic to de-risk your deal, because that's all it is. I've closed deals without all of Medic. But did they have more risk than the ones where I had, you know, ticked off all of Medic? Absolutely. You know, Medic gives you a great rubric for being able to step back and say, if something's not right here, we need to go back to our champion, or maybe we haven't understood the pain. Because if the pain was urgent, we wouldn't be struggling with the decision process as much as we are. Or if the pain was developed, we would understand some metrics by now. Or if the champion was really a champion and not an enemy, or just a coach who's someone who doesn't have the power, then we'd understand the decision criteria, because they would be introducing to people and they'd be going out proactively asking for it. So, you know, Medic is a great way of de-risking your deals. And whenever you come up against a blocker, you take a step back, but it has to be built on that foundation of a champion with developed pain.
Right. No, that's really phenomenal. And it's just crazy to think how, you know, these 3 simple questions that, you know, any toddler can almost ask themselves, if applied properly to a sales process, could really bring a deal forward. And is there maybe, speaking of champions, like, what's your approach to developing them? Do you have any stories with, like, you mentioned this one, you know, trying to reach out to other people in the org, but kind of bringing them to the table and really evangelizing your solution?
Yeah, it's a great point, because, and first, your point about being simple, it is absolutely right. My instinct is often to overcomplicate things, use flowery language, you know, talk too much, as I've probably done today. But actually, you know, as you go up, and I was really intimidated to make that change to talking to the C-suite, right? Because you tend to think of them as almost superhuman. They've got all these things on the plate. Why would they want to speak to me? But actually, it doesn't get more complex as the further you go. It actually gets simpler, because they don't necessarily care about the how. They care about the pain, right? And, you know, I spoke to a CEO once. He said, like, I'm looking across and I just see, and I've got a forest, right? And I just see all of these fires everywhere. I can only put out, you know, 3 or 4 fires a day. I have to choose which are the most important. So if you can come and identify, you know, and say to them, hey, you've seen this fire over here? It's pretty big. Like, we can help put that out for you in a really simple way. They almost don't care about, you know, how you do it. They care about the cost, obviously, but, you know, that's the way to speak to them. Actually, very, very simply. Sorry, remind me if I kind of went off and didn't answer your question there. Remind me of the question.
No, I asked you about a story with a champion, but this is a very great. Yeah.
So sorry, a story with a champion, and again, you know, I could tell stories about, you know, people sending cupcakes, people doing all these kind of big things, but it's not really about that. It's not about the kind of what a sales hero story, you know, it's about consistently turning up and adding value in every interaction, so that that person knows you and trusts you as someone who isn't there to waste time. Then you're not there to be transactional. You're there to be a strategic partner, and you need to embody that in every single interaction. It's not about, you know, a sweeping romantic gesture that's going to get this person to fall in love with you and your business. It's about turning up with a value pyramid. It's about listening to what they say, so that when you see an article, you share it with them, or when you have another client with that same problem, you ask them if they'd like to speak to each other. Or, you know, when you've got an event, you know, with some senior people in the room, you find out like what's important to this person, both on a professional level, but also on a personal level. You know, I've had clients who, you know, they're going for promotion, and champions will be the types of people who are going for promotion. They're not always C-suite. They're C-1, C-2. They want to build their career. They're ambitious. They're driven. You need to show them that this is the project that can give them that visibility across their organization and give them that promotion, right? And if they're the type of person who, you know, wants to talk, but they've never talked, you know, let's give them an opportunity to sit on a panel, to attend an event where they're sitting on a panel with other kind of senior leaders, maybe people who are more senior than them. It makes them look good. It makes them feel good. And you're adding value to them consistently. And then, but the most important, you can get rid of all of that and not do any of that. But the most important is that when you're there on a business meeting and you're turning up, you're prepared, you're on time, and you listen. So, and whether that means acting on something that they've told you previously, or making sure you show up and you're making them look good in front of their colleagues, they'll forgive any other sin, basically, as long as you're kind of turning up in those meetings and making them look good and turning up prepared.
Totally. No, it's phenomenal. I like it how it's very simple, and you know, people are becoming very, you know, flowery and about swag, and as you said, cupcakes. I mean, it's maybe nice to kind of get in the door, but not, you know, you really need to build like a relationship. That's phenomenal. So maybe, you know, getting closer to wrapping up here. So you mentioned, you know, Multiverse being, you know, a sales school for the reps. How does you know, an enterprise sales rep kind of build himself up and kind of stand out in a team?
Yeah, well, I mean, so in interview or in a team?
No, I would say no, in your day to day, because oftentimes you're like, you could be very focused on yourself and your territory, but how do you go beyond that?
Sure. Well, I'd recommend anyone kind of interested. Jeremy Duggan wrote an article which is posted on Medium back when he was at Dynamics, about his hiring philosophy and what he looks for. And, you know, those are the things that he's looking for you to embody, you know, every day. What I would say is, you know, coachability is really up there. You know, there's, you know, people sometimes put that as a no excuses mentality, but it's almost, you know, it's less aggressive than that. You know, and it's linked to another thing that's really important, which is humility. And, you know, staying humble. You know, there's an opportunity to earn lots of money, and you're speaking to very senior people, and you can get carried away with yourself. You get a lot of praise when you do well, you land a big deal, you can get carried away with yourself. It's happened to me. I'm sure I'll catch myself, or I'll be caught it happening again. You've got to you've got to identify where you need work and just keep working on it. And the coachability thing is around, you know, when you're getting that feedback, you know, when you've got a leader of leaders like Jeremy and Steve, you kind of just, you know, you just have to shut up and listen, right? If they're telling you what you've done is wrong, the only correct answer is, okay, great, I'll fix it. And either it's I'll fix it and I know how to fix it, or it's I'll fix it and can you point me in the right direction? That's it. And that's about being coachable. And that's, again, I've had to learn that the hard way, right? So they're looking for coachability. They're looking for humility. They're certainly looking for work ethic. Can you put the hours in? But the culture at Multiverse, you know, I've worked in schools, I've worked in charities. The culture at Multiverse is the most friendly, collaborative place I've ever worked, you know, especially within the sales organization. People just want to help out. And they're so lovely to speak to. And, you know, we're mission driven. We're there for the mission, right? So, you know, they want to see you taking those leadership steps. They want to see people stepping up, telling good stories in the forecast call on a Friday. They want to see people kind of offering up time for their colleagues, you know, meeting new colleagues, or, you know, if someone's in a bind, you know, putting a call in at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night and having half an hour as they go on a walk, and you talk them through the challenge and you give them another perspective. That's expected in our culture.
Totally. No, that's phenomenal. So you mentioned here two you know, sales leaders to follow in terms of Jeremy and Steve. We'll definitely link them here, and also that great blog post, which I've read several times already from Jeremy on his hiring methodology. Yeah.
Out as well. You know, they brought in, you know, a couple of other people from App Dynamics, but Al's here as well, who's on our team, who's kind of in sales enablement. We call him the surgeon, right? I call him the surgeon. That's my nickname for him. The way that man asks questions, he's just an absolute genius, right? You know, just sitting in a meeting with him, I want him in almost every meeting that I can get him in with me, because, you know, and I choose now, because obviously his diary is very busy. We've got, you know, 20, 30 reps now. I choose him for particular meetings, and I'm looking at his diary as I'm booking it in, because I know I need his question asking skills there. And again, you know, it's just learning all the time from these guys. They're just phenomenal.
Totally. And I've been on the receiving end on a call with Al, so I know exactly why you call him the surgeon. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so maybe to wrap up, any you know, sales tools or recommendations for other folks that you use?
Yeah, I mean, your phone is always number one, right? Use your phone more. If you're a sales rep out there, get your phone out, use it more, call more people, speak to people. That's number one. I've always been a big fan of HubSpot. You know, as a CRM, I think that's a great tool. I mean, I'd like to keep it basic in my process. I use Excel a lot for kind of tracking things. And we're lucky to have a really great team now in our sales operations team who use Tableau a lot, and they give us a lot of the reporting. I have no idea how it works on the back end, but that's a great tool that I use a lot. Yeah, those would be the one. And then obviously Chartloop for org charts. If you're struggling in terms of, you know, your champion's not giving you an org chart because they don't have one, or you haven't earned the right yet to ask that question, Chartloop's a great place to start. In the same vein as you turn up with a value pyramid or a 3 whys to say, here's what we understand of your business, you can turn up with an org chart, and you can say, and someone says, oh, you know, in our data analytics team, and you can say, oh, is that Janet's team? And they go, oh yeah, Janet Fisher. Yeah, I know Janet. Okay, great. And then you just seem that much more knowledgeable. And then then that gives you the right to ask questions like, and who's Janet's boss? And who's your boss? And, you know, how many people do they have in their team? And who's the power mover in that team? Who's the person who's going to get stuff done? And it helps you identify other champions as well. So yeah, those are the ones I'd say.
Right. Okay, that's phenomenal. I really like how you guys really keep it simple and just you know, go at it meticulously and deliver results, which I definitely know. Really cool, Daniel Wardle. This was phenomenal. Last question: where can people find you and connect with you?
Sure. Well, you know, Reddit where we connected, probably not there. But LinkedIn is a great place. You know, my messages are open. If you want to message me, you want some advice, you want a chat, you want to, you know, insult me for something I said today, you know, I can always learn. So please do. I think Daniel Wardle, Wardle, at Multiverse here in the UK. We're now in the US as well. And I think my PR guy.
Expanding.
Yeah. Sorry?
You guys are expanding, growing fast, no?
Yeah, growing really quickly, record-breaking Series B, all the good stuff. I haven't got time to talk about that now, but yeah, expanding into New York. We're based in London, mainly head office in London. We're hiring like crazy. So, you know, hit us up if you want some advice, you want to chat. It'd be great to hear from people off the back of this, really would.
Fantastic. Awesome, Daniel. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sean.